Before the glitter of stage lights and the applause of crowds, before sequined gowns and television cameras, there was only firelight, the glow of early humanity gathering in circles. Their beauty was not judged, it was revered. It was not about comparison, but celebration, a way of honoring life itself. Long before the first crown was ever placed on a head, people looked to beauty as a sign of the divine. The curve of a smile, the grace of movement, the warmth of kindness, these were not merely admired, they were worshipped. In the ancient world, beauty was more than skin deep. It was power, promise, and sometimes peril. The Greeks told stories of it, one in particular, whispered through time, the judgment of Paris, a contest, of sorts, between goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, each radiant, each divine, stood before a mortal man, each desiring the title of the fairest. It was a tale of beauty and consequence. For Paris's choice would spark the fires of the Trojan War. In this story, we glimpse humanity's first reflection of the pageant spirit, that beauty, once declared, has the power to shape destinies. Yet, while the Greek myths made beauty a cause for rivalry, other cultures sanctified it as part of the natural world. In ancient Egypt, beauty was holiness. The goddess Hathor, mother, nurturer, the divine embodiment of joy, was often depicted with mirrors and music. Festivals held in her honor crowned the most radiant women of the village, not as objects of desire, but as bearers of fertility and prosperity. These women represented the harvest, the Nile's generosity, and the balance between heaven and earth. In Mesopotamia, temples dedicated to Inanna, the goddess of love and war, shimmered with gold and perfume. Priestesses adorned themselves not in vanity, but as vessels of divine presence. Their adornment was a prayer, every necklace a hymn, every pigment a devotion. Beauty, in that time, was not personal. It was sacred. To be beautiful was to be close to the gods. Far to the north, in the mists of Celtic lands, maidens were crowned each spring as symbols of renewal. Their gowns were made of flowers, their crowns of woven vines. They walked among the people barefoot, bringing blessings for a fertile year. The people would gather at twilight, lighting fires to guide the sun's return, singing songs of gratitude for warmth and bloom. And somewhere, among laughter and smoke, a young woman would be lifted high, not as a queen of competition, but as a spirit of hope. Even the Vikings, fierce in legend, honored beauty not with jewels but with reverence. At midsummer, when the world turned golden under the midnight sun, they chose a maiden to lead the procession of light, a symbol that even amidst strength and conquest, grace had a place. Her steps were seen as the rhythm of the world itself, her smile a promise that winter would always give way to spring. As centuries turned, beauty's meaning shifted, but its reverence never dimmed. During the Middle Ages, when the air smelled of bread and soil, beauty took to the fields. Harvest fairs filled the countryside. Songs, laughter, the smell of ripe grain. From these gatherings came a familiar sight, the crowning of the harvest maiden. She was not judged for perfection, but chosen for her kindness, her diligence, her presence in the village. She led the parade through cobblestone streets, carrying wheat in her arms, a living symbol of life's abundance. It is here, perhaps, that the first seeds of the modern beauty queen were sown, not in vanity, but in gratitude. Beauty was not a prize to be won, but a reminder of the harmony between people and the earth that sustained them. Through each era, the human desire to celebrate beauty endured. From the marble courts of Greece to the candlelit halls of medieval Europe, and though the forms changed, from goddess to maiden, from spirit to queen, one truth remained. Beauty was a reflection of life itself. It was the light that drew us together, the warmth that gave meaning to survival. To the ancients, beauty was not an adornment, but a message that life in all its fragility and brilliance was worth cherishing. It was a silent hymn carried across generations, echoing in the hearts of those who gazed at another and saw something divine. And so, before there were crowns, there was connection. Before there were contests, there was communion. Beauty, in its earliest form, was not a measure. It was a mirror, a reflection of the earth's own rhythm, the sun's own glow, and humanity's first dream of grace. The 19th century was an age of transformation, an era of steam, invention, and curiosity. Cities swelled, cameras clicked for the first time, and leisure became a new language of the modern world. Humanity had survived revolutions and wars, and now it sought delight in travel, in art, and, once more, in beauty. Yet this beauty was not the divine mystery of old. It was human, tangible, captured in sunlight and seaside air. Along the coasts of Europe, where parasols dotted the sand and orchestras played beside the waves, a new ritual began to take shape, the bathing beauty contest. It was modest by today's standards. Women in ankle-length swimwear, walking along wooden piers as the public watched and applauded. These events, held in English seaside towns like Brighton and Scarborough, and soon in American shores from Coney Island to California, were born from the growing leisure culture of the industrial age. In 1880, the first recorded bathing beauty competition took place in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. It was simple and lighthearted, judged by local dignitaries and reported in local newspapers. A century earlier, such a spectacle might have been scandalous. Now, it was a symbol of modernity. Women, once confined to parlors and propriety, stepping boldly into sunlight. The trend spread quickly across both continents. The contests were not just displays of beauty. They were markers of a world in motion, of trains that could take families to the shore, of women daring to define their image in public, of a society discovering a new, visible kind of freedom. By the 1920s, the world had changed again. The Great War had left behind rubble and silence, and in that silence, humanity sought joy. The Jazz Age roared to life, sequins, saxophones, and dreams of better days. In 1921, on the golden boardwalks of Atlantic City, the Miss America pageant was born. It began not as a grand coronation, but as a publicity idea, a way to keep tourists in town after Labor Day. The organizers called it the Intercity Beauty Contest. Young women representing various American cities arrived, wearing bathing costumes and sashes. They paraded down the boardwalk as a crowd gathered, veterans, families, beachgoers, all drawn by the spectacle of hope and glamour after years of hardship. That first winner was Margaret Gorman. A 16-year-old from Washington, D.C., she stood just 5 feet 1 inch tall, her curls pinned in the style of the time, her eyes bright with wonder. Reporters described her as the type of American girlhood that exemplifies wholesome beauty. She was crowned Miss America, though the title was chosen later. In that moment, she was simply the nation's sweetheart. Margaret's victory marked the dawn of a new era. For the first time, beauty was being defined not by myth or ritual, but by a modern ideal, the face of the American dream itself. The contest grew each year, evolving with the times. By the 1930s, it featured evening gowns and talent performances. By the 1950s, it was broadcast on television. But in those early years, under the golden light of Atlantic City, it was something simpler, a celebration of life's return, of youth and joy, reborn after the darkness of war. Across the Atlantic, another nation, weary but proud, sought its own symbol of renewal. In 1920, just 2 years after the end of the First World War, France introduced Miss France. Founded by journalist Maurice de Walef, it was more than a contest of appearance. It was an act of reconstruction. The country was scarred, its fields still bearing the wounds of battle. To name a Miss France was to proclaim that grace, culture, and elegance still lived in the French spirit. The first winner, Agnes Sauret, was just 17. Born in the Basque village of Bayonne, she had eyes the color of dawn, as one newspaper poetically wrote. She was chosen through photographs. Nearly 2,000 women sent their portraits to the newspaper, and readers voted. Agnes won by overwhelming admiration. Her image graced postcards and magazines, her name sung in cafes. She traveled the country as a symbol of national pride, the new Marianne, not holding a flag, but smiling into the light. But her story was bittersweet. In 1928, at the age of only 26, Agnes died while touring in Argentina. She was buried in a grave she could not afford. Her mother sold her jewels to bring her home. On her tomb, in the French countryside, the inscription reads, "To the most beautiful girl in France who did not have enough beauty to live." Her story, though tragic, immortalized the ideal that Miss France would continue to embody, not perfection, but humanity wrapped in grace. From her legacy grew generations of women who carried France's spirit through time, beauty as art, elegance as identity. And across oceans, under the bright tropical sun of the Philippines, another pageant was born. One that would later be recognized as the first recorded beauty contest in Asia. It was 1908, the American colonial period, and Manila was a city of contrasts. Spanish churches stood beside new American buildings. Horse-drawn carriages shared the streets with electric trams. In that blend of East and West, the Manila Carnival Queen was born. The contest was part of the Manila Carnival, an event created to foster unity and celebrate progress under the new government. But it became much more, a national spectacle where Filipinos redefined their identity through beauty. The Carnival Queen was chosen not only for her looks, but for her intelligence, grace, and representation of modern Filipino womanhood. The first queen, Pura Villanueva Caló, was a woman ahead of her time. A writer, activist, and suffragist. She used her platform to promote education and women's rights. Her selection marked a quiet revolution, beauty not as submission, but as power, as voice. In later years, her daughter, Maria Caló Catibac, would also be crowned Carnival Queen, linking to generations of beauty and intellect. The pageant itself evolved into a national institution, later giving rise to Miss Philippines and inspiring countless regional contests. For a nation in the midst of transformation, each queen was more than a symbol. She was a reflection of what the Philippines was becoming: proud, independent, and radiant. Across continents, from France's wounded elegance to America's seaside dreams, from the Philippines' hopeful identity to the laughter of English shores, the pageant movement spread like a soft tide, carrying with it not vanity, but aspiration. Each contest mirrored its time: the optimism of peace, the rediscovery of joy, the subtle defiance of tradition. These early pageants were mirrors, not just of beauty, but of the world's longing for harmony and hope. Every sash, every smile, every crown told a story of recovery, of pride, of the human desire to find grace amid change. As the lights of the 20th century grew brighter, so too did the meaning of beauty. It became global, not confined to palaces or parades, but a stage upon which the world itself would soon gather. And so, from seaside boardwalks and colonial ballrooms, the modern pageant was born, shimmering with dreams, fragile yet bold, a reflection of every era's heart. The world awoke to a new kind of light in the 1950s. Television. Screens flickered to life in living rooms across the globe, casting their silvery glow upon families who gathered around to witness modern magic. It was the era of optimism, of post-war rebuilding, of jazz and jet planes, of dreams dressed in silk and satin. And within this shimmering new world, a new spectacle rose to prominence: the global beauty pageant. For the first time in history, beauty was not confined by borders or languages. It was broadcast, photographed, exported, transformed into a symbol of modernity, peace, and, inevitably, profit. The first to take the stage in this new age was Miss World, founded in 1951 by British entrepreneur Eric Morley. The pageant began humbly as part of the Festival of Britain, where Morley organized a bikini contest called the Festival Bikini Girl Competition. But what began as a publicity stunt soon captured the imagination of the press and the public. Newspapers clamored to feature the contestants. Cameras turned their smiles into symbols of a bright post-war future. The first Miss World, Kiki Håkansson of Sweden, was crowned wearing a bikini, a choice that sparked outrage from religious groups, but fascination from nearly everyone else. She represented the new woman, liberated, radiant, and daringly modern. Yet, even as the controversy grew, the event thrived. Each year, more countries sent delegates, each woman a representation of her nation's beauty and pride. By the mid-1950s, Miss World had become an annual global event, watched and discussed in homes from London to Manila. The following year, in 1952, another pageant was born, Miss Universe, founded by the American clothing company Pacific Knitting Mills, creators of Catalina swimwear. When Catalina's sponsorship of Miss America ended over disagreements about the contest's direction, the company decided to create its own pageant. The result was something grander, more cinematic, and more international. Held in Long Beach, California, the first Miss Universe pageant crowned Armi Kusela of Finland, a graceful 19-year-old whose poise and warmth captivated the world. She was described by Life magazine as a smile that could melt the Arctic. Her crowning moment, broadcast across the United States, signaled something larger. Beauty had become a global language. Through the 1950s and 1960s, these international pageants became global spectacles, merging entertainment, commerce, and culture in dazzling synchronization. The women who stood on those stages were more than contestants. They were ambassadors. Each carried not only her nation's flag, but also its story. Akiko Kojima, crowned Miss Universe 1959, became Japan's first winner, just 14 years after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Her triumph was deeply symbolic. Japan, once defeated and shamed, was now being seen anew, dignified, elegant, reborn. In 1966, Rita Faria of India became the first Asian woman to win Miss World. She was a medical student, intelligent and articulate, and she broke the stereotype of beauty as vanity. Her victory inspired generations of women across Asia, showing that intellect and grace could coexist, that beauty could be powerful, thoughtful, and modern. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, a new phenomenon was taking shape. The country, known for its natural splendor and vibrant spirit, began to invest heavily in pageantry, turning it into a national passion. By the 1970s, Venezuela would become the factory of queens, producing winners with almost scientific precision, poise training, media rehearsals, beauty academies. But in these earlier years, the groundwork was already being laid, as women like Susanna Duisham, crowned Miss World 1955, became national icons. Her victory wasn't just personal, it was patriotic. She was celebrated in Caracas with parades and songs, her face printed on postage stamps. Each winner was both an individual and a symbol of grace, of aspiration, and of a world coming together through spectacle. Yet, behind the grandeur and the applause, another story was unfolding, one written not in glitter, but in contracts, products, and sponsorships. Pageants had become a marketplace of beauty. Television networks saw soaring ratings. Sponsors saw opportunity. Cosmetic brands, swimsuit lines, jewelry houses, and airlines all realized that a crown could sell dreams and products. Miss Universe was sponsored by Catalina Swimwear, Miss World by Mecca Cosmetics. Hair care companies offered exclusive styling deals. Perfume brands named fragrances after reigning queens. In some countries, radio shows held beauty product raffles tied to the contests, while newspapers ran columns comparing the styles of winners to the latest trends consumers could buy. In the Philippines, Miss Universe's global reach made beauty pageants synonymous with modern femininity. Brands like Pond's, Lux, and Revlon tied their marketing to ideals of Miss-like beauty. Across Latin America, beauty queens endorsed everything from toothpaste to typewriters, their faces radiant on billboards. The commercialization of beauty was both subtle and sweeping, a transformation of an ancient idea into a global economy. For the first time, beauty itself became a commodity, measured, marketed, and sold through the language of aspiration. But beauty was also political. In an age shadowed by the Cold War, international pageants became instruments of soft power. A crown could say what diplomats could not. When a woman from the Philippines, India, or Japan took the stage, she represented not just herself, but her country's emerging image, poised, cultured, global. When Venezuela or Colombia won, it spoke of national pride amid political turmoil. The pageant stage became a mirror of the world's ambitions and contradictions, where nations quietly competed for cultural influence under the glittering lights. For the West, especially America and Britain, pageants projected confidence, a celebration of consumer society, fashion, and freedom. For post-colonial nations, they were a platform to assert identity, dignity, and progress. Thus, beneath the music and the smiles, beauty became diplomacy. Yet as the stage lights grew brighter, so too did the questions they cast into shadow. By the late 1960s, voices began to rise. Soft at first, then sharper. Feminists asked, "What is perfection? And who decides it?" In 1968, outside the Miss America pageant in Atlantic City, women protested what they saw as the commercialization and objectification of the female body. They threw brass curlers and false eyelashes into a freedom trash can, chanting that women were more than their measurements. The protests made headlines. Suddenly, the pageant was no longer just a glamorous show. It was a battleground of ideas. But even as criticism grew, the fascination endured. Because beneath the controversy lay a universal truth. Humanity had always been drawn to beauty, not the surface kind alone, but the deeper longing it represented. A longing for connection, for admiration, for the harmony between form and spirit. The crowns shone on, not merely as ornaments, but as mirrors reflecting our collective desire to see the best in ourselves, and, perhaps, the best of what our world could be. The golden age of pageantry, from the 1950s to the 1960s, was more than just an era of glamour. It was the age when beauty became global currency, a language of dreams translated through images, screens, and silk. The women who walked across those stages walked, too, across history, embodying the grace of nations, the hope of generations, and the contradictions of a modern world in search of meaning beneath the glitter. And as the final note fades, one cannot help but wonder, were these women simply reflections of their time, or were they, in their poise, in their courage, in their imperfect perfection, shaping the very definition of beauty itself? By the time the 1960s drew to a close, the shimmer of sequins had begun to lose its innocence. What once seemed to the world like a celebration of grace and aspiration, the parading of beauty before admiring crowds, began to feel, to many women, like a cage gilded in gold. Television cameras had made beauty pageants into global spectacles, watched by millions. The gowns were grander, the smiles brighter, the crowns heavier with meaning. But beneath the applause, another voice was growing, low, persistent, and questioning. In 1968, that voice found its echo on the Atlantic City boardwalk. It was the night of the Miss America pageant, and outside the convention hall, hundreds of women gathered, writers, students, activists, carrying signs that read, "No more mindless boob girly symbol," and "Freedom for women, not for beauty queens." They brought with them a trash can, the now famous Freedom trash can, into which they threw symbols of what they saw as female oppression: high heels, curlers, girdles, aprons, even brass. The media, fascinated by the spectacle, wrongly labeled it the bra-burning protest, though no fire was lit that night. Still, something far more profound had been set ablaze, an idea. For the first time in modern history, beauty itself was being questioned. Was it something to be celebrated, or something used to contain? Was the stage a platform for confidence, or a pedestal of control? The Miss America protest marked a turning point. The women outside weren't angry at beauty itself, but at the narrowness of its definition. They were challenging a culture that taught women that their worth was measured by their waistlines, their smiles, their symmetry. The world listened, and slowly, the pageant world began to change. In the years that followed, the glitter softened. Pageants, feeling the tremor of shifting tides, began to redefine themselves. The Miss America organization, in response to growing criticism, introduced new elements: a talent competition, a platform for education, and later, scholarship programs. They emphasized intelligence, ambition, and individuality. Contestants began speaking about their studies, careers, and causes. Beauty at last began to share the stage with purpose. Elsewhere, international pageants followed suit. By the 1980s, Miss Universe and Miss World were no longer just fashion parades. They had become celebrations of culture, advocacy, and intellect. Contestants began using their voices to discuss global issues: poverty, education, peace, and equality. In 1981, Miss World introduced the slogan "Beauty with a Purpose." It was more than marketing, it was a promise that the platform of pageantry could be used to uplift, not just to dazzle. Under this initiative, contestants were encouraged to champion charitable causes. From children's hospitals to disaster relief efforts, beauty queens became ambassadors of compassion. Aishwarya Rai, crowned Miss World in 1994, would later say, "Beauty is not just how you look, it is what you do with what you have been given." Her reign became a symbol of this new philosophy, one where grace met purpose. As feminism entered the mainstream, the narrative surrounding pageants evolved yet again. In some circles, they were still criticized, relics of an outdated era, stubbornly clinging to appearances, but to others, they were being reborn, transformed by the very voices that once opposed them. Women were no longer passive figures in gowns. They were speakers, advocates, doctors, engineers, and activists, and they were reclaiming the stage for themselves. Sushmita Sen, crowned Miss Universe in 1994, famously declared during her final question that the essence of a woman is being a mother and giving care, a sentiment she later lived by through her advocacy for adoption and education. Lara Dutta, her successor from India in 2000, spoke of peace and unity with such eloquence that she redefined what it meant to be a beauty queen: articulate, informed, fearless. In this new age, crowns no longer symbolized perfection. They represented potential. Yet not all evolution came easily. Pageantry continued to wrestle with its contradictions between glamour and authenticity, tradition and progress. Then, at the dawn of the 21st century, came an idea that would take the transformation even further. A pageant built not on physical beauty, but on the beauty of purpose itself. In 2001, the Philippines launched Miss Earth, a pageant unlike any that came before it. Its mission was clear: to promote environmental awareness and action. Here, contestants were not only judged on stage presence and eloquence, but also on their knowledge of sustainability. climate change, and ecological protection. The crown itself was designed to symbolize the four elements: earth, air, water, and fire, representing harmony between humanity and nature. Miss Earth marked a bold evolution, from crowns to causes. Its winners planted trees, led cleanup drives, and partnered with the United Nations for environmental programs. Beauty, once ornamental, became instrumental. From Miss World's beauty with a purpose to Miss Earth's beauties for a cause, the spirit of pageantry was slowly rewritten. One question, one crown, one act of courage at a time. But perhaps the truest transformation was more subtle, not in the contests themselves, but in the women who took part in them. Gone were the days when a queen was expected only to smile and wave. The modern beauty queen was a scholar, a spokesperson, a symbol of agency. She was just as likely to stand before the United Nations as she was to walk a runway. The microphone, once a prop, had become a weapon of voice. The evening gown had become a flag, a banner of self-expression. And beauty, once used to divide and define, had become a bridge between worlds. Still, not all battles were won. Critics continued to question whether any competition could truly escape the weight of appearance. Some argued that even purpose-driven pageants risked polishing the same old ideals under new names. Others countered that progress, though imperfect, was visible and vital. Because, for all its flaws, the stage had become one of the few global spaces where women of every color, creed, and country could be seen. And to be seen, truly seen, is a power all its own. So, as the music swells and the spotlight softens, the world sees not just beauty, but evolution. From the protests of Atlantic City to the global campaigns for clean air and water, the story of pageantry mirrors the story of womanhood itself, from object to subject, from symbol to self. The crowns remain, yes, but now, they shine differently. They are no longer prizes for perfection. They are reminders of progress. Because in every generation, beauty has meant something new. Once, it meant symmetry. Then, it meant grace. Now, it means purpose. And as long as there are women who dare to redefine it, the story of beauty, and the world it reflects, will continue to evolve. The stage lights still glimmer, the music still swells, but something profound has changed. No longer is the pageant stage a mirror of perfection polished to impossibility. Instead, it has become a prism, splitting the light of beauty into many colors, many voices, many faces. The 1980s and 1990s arrived as decades of reckoning and reawakening. Around the world, societies began to ask, who belongs on the stage? The answers came slowly, but they came, soft as a revolution, steady as a heartbeat. In 1983, Vanessa Williams stood beneath the sparkling lights of Atlantic City as the first Black woman to be crowned Miss America. Her victory was a watershed moment, a testament to resilience and representation. Despite controversy and her eventual resignation, her triumph echoed across generations. It was more than a crown, it was an awakening. The unspoken boundaries of race and appearance had been challenged, and beauty's long, narrow corridor began to widen. Soon after, in 1991, Lupita Jones of Mexico was crowned Miss Universe. Her win signaled that grace and intelligence could transcend borders, that a queen's power lay not only in her presence, but in her purpose. And in 1994, Sushmita Sen of India was crowned Miss Universe, her poise and intellect introducing a new archetype, a woman of strength, compassion, and conviction. When asked what it meant to be a woman, Sen's answer, radiant, assured, resonated far beyond the pageant stage. It redefined beauty as agency, as the freedom to define oneself. Across continents, the meaning of beauty continued to evolve. In the Philippines, beauty pageants became more than a spectacle. They became part of the nation's identity. To Filipinos, the pageant stage was a canvas on which to paint dreams, where every victory symbolized resilience, pride, and unity. From Gloria Diaz to Catriona Gray, Filipina queens carried not just crowns, but the hopes of an entire people. Venezuela, too, turned pageantry into an art form, schools dedicated to training future queens, and a culture that viewed beauty as both craft and discipline. But as the world turned toward the new millennium, something deeper took root. Beauty could no longer exist in isolation. It had to mean something. Thus began the era of advocacy. Miss World, one of the oldest and most prestigious pageants, introduced the program Beauty with a Purpose. It was a quiet revolution, a reimagining of what it meant to wear a crown. Contestants were now judged not only for elegance or eloquence, but for the causes they championed. Projects built schools in rural communities, funded surgeries for children, and empowered women through education. The sash became a symbol not just of beauty, but of service. Soon, others followed. Miss Universe amplified platforms for HIV/AIDS awareness, women's health, and gender equality. Miss International spoke of cultural understanding and peace. And in 2001, a new crown entered the constellation, Miss Earth's. Born in the Philippines, Miss Earth's placed the planet itself at the center of the pageant universe. Its advocacy was clear: beauty for a cause, beauty for the earth. Contestants were not only representatives of their nations, but ambassadors for sustainability. Through tree planting, environmental campaigns, and partnerships with organizations like the United Nations Environment Program, Miss Earth merged glamour with global responsibility. The crowns, often crafted from recycled materials, reflected a new ideal, where beauty did not consume, but conserved. The Sustainable Development Goals, established by the United Nations in 2015, found echoes in this movement. Pageants began aligning with these principles, promoting clean water and sanitation, climate action, gender equality, and quality education. Each contestant, standing beneath the spotlights, became a storyteller of purpose, a bridge between beauty and change. And still, beauty's transformation continued. The mirror widened further, reflecting bodies once unseen on the world stage. Plus-size pageants began to emerge, celebrating the strength, confidence, and grace of women beyond the narrow confines of traditional ideals. In 2013, the world took notice when Nina Davuluri, an Indian American, was crowned Miss America, defying racial stereotypes. In recent years, contestants with disabilities, trans women, and advocates for inclusivity have joined the stage, expanding the conversation of what it means to be beautiful. Pageantry, once a symbol of uniform perfection, had become a dialogue, a living, evolving conversation between humanity and its ideals. The gowns still shimmer, The crowns still shine, but beneath the surface lies something deeper: compassion, intellect, and the courage to speak truth under the brightest lights. In the quiet moments after the music fades, one can feel it, the heartbeat of a movement that began centuries ago, in ancient rituals and myths, now transformed into something universal. Beauty, once measured by symmetry and grace, now finds its essence in empathy and purpose. From the seaside contests of the 19th century to the advocacy-driven stages of today, the story of pageantry mirrors the story of humanity itself, a journey from admiration to understanding, from spectacle to substance. And so, as the world continues to turn and the crowns pass from one hand to another, the message remains clear. Beauty is not what we behold. It is what we become. The lights no longer come only from the stage. They glow from screens, millions of them, tiny constellations scattered across the world. The modern pageant queen is not just crowned beneath chandeliers and television cameras, but beneath the unblinking gaze of digital eyes. Beauty, once measured by the grace of a walk or the perfection of a pose, is now shaped by pixels, engagement rates, and algorithms. The rise of the internet in the late 1990s and the birth of social media in the 2000s changed everything. Suddenly, the stage expanded beyond theaters and auditoriums. It became infinite. A young woman in Manila, Caracas, or Lagos could speak to millions with a single post. A smile captured in morning light could travel farther than any televised coronation. Beauty had been democratized, no longer the domain of a chosen few, but open to anyone with a camera and a story to tell. Pageant organizations began to evolve alongside this new landscape. Once, judges sat in velvet-lined booths, scoring contestants on poise, physique, and charm. Now, they watch screens, scroll through feeds, and take note of followers, engagement, and content reach. The crown, once a symbol bestowed from above, now rests in the hands of the public. Miss Grand International, a pageant born in 2013, embodies this transformation. Founded in Thailand, it embraces spectacle and virality, a fusion of traditional beauty, contest glamour, with the immediacy of social media culture. Each year, its candidates master not only their stage presence, but their online personas. Live streams, hashtags, and fan votes have become essential ingredients of victory. A contestant's charisma online often matters as much as her eloquence on stage. In the Miss Grand format, the journey is continuous. Daily interviews, self-produced videos, and digital campaigns that let the audience witness not just the final performance, but the evolution of a queen in real time. And this shift is not isolated. The world's major pageants, Miss Universe, Miss World, Miss International, Miss Earth, have all adapted to a new rhythm. Pre-pageant challenges now include social media voting. Instagram and TikTok are not mere accessories to the competition. They are the competition. The modern queen must curate her story, command attention, and build connection, not only in front of a live audience, but through the invisible intimacy of the screen. In this era, influence has become a form of currency. Women with powerful online followings, once considered outsiders to traditional pageantry, now step onto the global stage as contenders. Some are beauty vloggers, others are social advocates or brand ambassadors. They understand lighting, tone, algorithms, the mechanics of attention. And while their looks remain a factor, their success often depends more on engagement than on symmetry. A perfect example can be found in the recent winners of Miss Universe and Miss Earth, many of whom arrived with established platforms, voices already amplified through years of digital presence. The pageant stage merely expands their reach. A crown, in this new age, is not a beginning but a continuation, a way to transform influence into impact. Beauty, once confined to the gaze of judges and the lens of photographers, is now constantly negotiated through filters and feeds. The question of authenticity looms large. Are we celebrating real people or curated personas? The same technology that gave everyone a voice also birthed new pressures to maintain perfection, to please the algorithm, to perform constantly. Controversies arise like ripples in a pool of reflected light. Contestants face scrutiny not only for what they say or do, but for what they post, what they like, and what they hide. Old tweets resurface. Private photos become public. Pageantry has always been a mirror of its time, and now, that mirror is a touchscreen. Yet, amid the chaos of comment sections and viral trends, something deeply human endures. Beneath the filters and frames, the essence of beauty still seeks connection, the same longing that once drew crowds to seaside contests and coronation halls. The applause has changed its sound, now a digital roar of emojis and hearts, but the emotion behind it remains timeless. The digital era has blurred the line between contestant and audience. Viewers become participants, voting through apps, debating through hashtags, shaping narratives in real time. The idea of the most beautiful is no longer dictated by a panel but by collective perception, fluid, shifting, endlessly diverse. Still, the transformation is not without consequence. With the rise of influencer culture, beauty and commerce have intertwined more tightly than ever. Pageant contestants are often brand partners before they even compete, using their platforms to promote fashion lines, cosmetics, or lifestyle products. The once distinct world of competition and advertising has merged. Every caption, every video, every story, a piece of strategy. And yet, there is also empowerment in this. Women now own their image, their platforms, their narratives. They are both the product and the producer, shaping their stories with authenticity and artistry. Many use this visibility for purpose, speaking about mental health, environmental change, body positivity, and cultural pride. The screen, for all its distortions, has also become a window into truth. In this new world, a crown is no longer made only of metal and gems. It is built from connection, likes, comments, messages, and shared belief. The modern queen carries her kingdom in her phone, her influence measured not just in steps upon a stage, but in the ripples she creates across the digital sea. The camera no longer looks at her. It moves with her. It follows her story through live streams, interviews, and the endless scroll of her journey. And somewhere, amid the flickering of pixels and the hum of devices, beauty finds a new reflection. Not frozen, not idealized, but alive and luminous. Because even in a world of algorithms and artifice, one truth endures. The search for beauty is, and always has been, the search for belonging. We no longer watch the stage from afar. We live inside it, and there, in the light of our own screens, we see ourselves, reflected, refracted, and infinitely real. In the global tale of beauty, the spotlight has long shone on women. Yet, in recent decades, that light has quietly widened to include men. Male pageants are a more recent bloom in the garden of pageantry, but their roots are growing deep. Their existence raises familiar questions. What is ideal masculine beauty? What expectations weigh upon its bearer? And how do male pageants reflect changing culture? Male beauty contests began slowly, often influenced by their female counterparts, and sometimes by modeling competitions and fitness culture. In Europe and the Americas, bathing beauty style contests for men were rare and informal. Men judged for physique or handsomeness, but not yet part of large, formalized pageants. For example, in the 1920s, Venice Pier in California hosted a male beauty event, men competing for most handsome, most fit, even homeliest, in a contest of humor and spectacle. It wasn't until the late 20th century and early 21st that male pageants began to emerge in many countries with formal structure, crowns, stages, international titles. In 1993, Manhunt International became one of the better-known male international pageants. Contestants are evaluated on multiple rounds: interviews, fashion, swimwear, evening wear. The Philippines has become a hub for male pageantry in Asia. Male pageants are smaller in scale compared to female contests, but they carry significance. Young men compete not only for beauty or physique, but increasingly for advocacy and service. In the Philippines, participants speak about their platform: youth empowerment, mental health, community service, showing that male pageants are also evolving in purpose. One of the newer major names is Man of the World, established in 2017 by the Prime Events Productions Philippines Foundation. It bills itself not just as a beauty contest, but as a place to promote education, leadership, and global advocacy. Its motto, masculinity with responsibility. National male pageants also exist in many countries. Mr. Peru, Mr. Lebanon, Mr. Hong Kong, and Mr. India are examples. Winners of these national competitions often go on to international stages, like Mr. World, Mr. Supranational, or Man of the World. Behind the stages, much like with female pageants, male pageants are cultural mirrors, reflecting evolving ideas of masculinity, identity, and what it means to be seen. Once, masculine beauty was defined by strength, stoicism, athleticism. Now, in many competitions, judges, audiences, and contestants embrace vulnerability, grooming, personal advocacy, and aesthetic diversity. In many male contests, physical fitness remains a core component: swimwear, physique rounds, evening wear, but so do interviews, talent, public speaking, social impact. Filmed segments show contestants discussing causes they care about. The pageant king must project not only a strong body, but a compassionate heart and an engaged voice. Yet with growth come controversies. Some male pageants are criticized for reinforcing unrealistic body expectations, muscularity, low body fat, perfect grooming. In some smaller pageants, especially local or informal contests, the standards are inconsistent. As with female pageants, allegations of exploitative practices, undue pressure, and unrealistic preparation costs rise. Some contestants use performance-enhancing supplements or strict dieting to meet physique expectations. Social media amplifies comparison, filter culture, and the tension between authenticity and image. Still, in the shifting world of gender and representation, male pageantry marks a transformation. It proposes that men, too, may be celebrated for beauty that includes kindness, intelligence, confidence, and social purpose. In many pageants, winners are expected to embody more than appearance. They champion health, youth empowerment, environmental awareness, or community service. They become ambassadors in their countries. As the digital age deepens, male pageants also adapt. Contestants build followings online, engage with fans, manage votes and visibility. Countries that were once silent on pageants for men now broadcast them, train their representatives, and link victories to modeling, entertainment, or public service careers. Representation matters. Contestants of diverse races, body types, and social backgrounds are increasingly visible, though the journey toward wider inclusion is still ongoing. In sum, male pageantry is a newer chapter in the story of beauty. It's less ancient, perhaps, but its aspirations are no less profound. It reveals our changing ideas of gender, of public persona, and of what is permitted to be beautiful. Like female pageantry, it balances light and shadow, show and sincerity, spectacle and service. As the spotlight shifts, perhaps part of its weight will be to ask not just who is crowned, but why. And perhaps, in asking that question, male pageantry becomes another mirror, in which society sees not only the ideal, but the reflection of its own values. There has never been a single definition of beauty, only the endless attempt to understand it. From the faint glow of oil lamps flickering on the walls of ancient temples, to the blinding flash of stage lights on modern crowns, beauty has always been humanity's quiet reflection, a mirror of its hopes, its insecurities, its ideals. When we trace the history of pageantry, we are not only watching the evolution of fashion or the passage of crowns, we are watching the story of us, the story of how humankind, from the first sculpted goddess to the last televised coronation, has tried to make sense of its longing to be seen, not as perfect, but as worthy. In ancient times, beauty was prayer. It was the shape of gratitude offered to the gods, in carvings, dances, songs, and festivals. It was never meant for judgment, but for reverence. The first beauty queens did not wear sashes or diamonds. They wore flowers, wheat, and the sunlight of their seasons. They were chosen not for symmetry, but for symbolism, a living embodiment of harvest, fertility, and the renewal of life. Then came civilization, with its hierarchies and laws. Beauty became something to aspire to, a mark of grace, status, and privilege. The Renaissance painted it in oils. The Victorians laced it in corsets. The 20th century filmed it, televised it, turned it into spectacle. And in every transition, beauty became both a stage and a struggle, a contest between the outer form and the inner voice. When we look at the crowns today, Miss Universe, Miss World, Miss Earth, Mr. World, Manhunt International, they glitter not only with gemstones, but with centuries of yearning for recognition, for belonging, for love. The contestants, in gowns and suits, in national costumes and cultural pride, step forward as emblems of what their nations believe beauty means and what they wish it could mean. And yet, as the years unfold, we have begun to understand something deeper. That beauty is not vanity, it is vulnerability. To walk onto a stage, to be seen, to be measured, and yet to smile. That is not arrogance, but courage. To tell the world one's dreams, one's story, one's cause. That is not ambition, but hope. The crown has changed. Once, it was gold and gemstone, shining under chandeliers. Now, it is invisible, worn by those who serve, who teach, who lift others. Beauty pageants have become less about perfection and more about purpose. The modern queen speaks of climate, education, equality, and peace. The modern king talks about empowerment, responsibility, and change. Their voices ripple beyond the applause into classrooms, villages, and online communities. But even without a crown, each human being still participates in the same quiet ritual of waking each day and seeking to be seen. Not for what the mirror shows, but for what the soul radiates. Across generations, beauty has expanded its definition. Once it meant symmetry, then it meant style. Now, it means story. The story that lives within a person's gaze, within laughter lines, within scars, within resilience. Beauty is no longer confined to stages or cameras. It lives in screens that glow softly in our palms. It lives in the unfiltered photo of a face lit by morning light. It lives in movements that challenge what beauty should be, in plus-size queens, in older contestants, in diverse faces once excluded from the frame. The mirror of beauty is no longer a single reflection, but a mosaic of countless human truths. And in that mosaic, there are cracks, tiny fractures where imperfection glimmers through. Yet those cracks are what make it whole. Because beauty, at its purest, is not about being flawless. It is about being seen despite the flaws. It is about persistence, the will to shine even when the world forgets to look. When we celebrate beauty, we celebrate survival. We celebrate the hands that built the stages, the hearts that dared to hope, the voices that refused silence. We celebrate the eternal truth that we are creatures who seek connection, to be looked at not as ornaments, but as mirrors of something divine. Perhaps that is why, no matter the age, no matter the form, humanity continues to crown its symbols of beauty. The gesture itself, the placing of a crown, is an act of faith. Faith that there exists, in every face, a reflection of grace. Faith that to see another person shine is to remember the light that lives within us. From ancient myths to modern screens, beauty remains our mirror. It is not vanity, but vulnerability. Not perfection, but persistence. The crown may change, once gold, now unseen, but the dream remains the same. To be seen, to be cherished, to be understood. In every age, in every face, the world searches for beauty, and in that search, we find ourselves.